Okay, so welcome to the Sunday Sit, held by the Monastic Academy for the Preservation of Life on Earth. I got a new name recently, so my new name is Xūramitra, which means something like heroic friend. Our friend of heroes. We did a lay ordination ceremony about a month ago up at Lowell, and about six of us took lay ordination. But you can still call me Peter if you want. I also go by Peter.
Did you say Šūramitra?
Xūramitra.
Can you spell the first one?
Well, in Pali it's Suramitra, but I also use an X instead of an S. And people at the monasteries call me Mitra, it's easier. You can also stick with Peter since somebody So the crew up in Lowell is currently holding a program. They're doing a retreat program right now, so I came down and thought I'd teach one of the suttas that is near and dear to my heart, that had a profound impact on me. Earlier this year when I read it in my long retreat, and it is the Ratthapala Sutta, part of the Middle Length Discourses, one of the oldest classical texts of Buddhism. And so Ratthapala was considered the foremost disciple of the Buddha in faith. He had the most faith. And it's said that one time as a young man, he was at a gathering where the Buddha was giving a talk, and he considered to himself basically something like, what this person is saying seems true and wise and helpful, and it's hard to live this pure, dedicated type of life while doing the same householder responsibilities, living a regular, average householder life. And so I would like to become ordained under Buddha and follow his teachings full time. After this one talk, heard him one time, had this contemplation, and then went to the Buddha afterwards and told him, I would like to get ordained. I would like to take full ordination. I would like to commit my life to this right now, right here. So he's considered the foremost in faith. And the Buddha said, do you have your parents' permission? At some point they made a rule that you need to get your parents' permission to do this. And so Ratthapala said, no. I imagine he said something like, I just literally heard you the first time 2 minutes ago and just decided to join. I haven't asked my parents. And so the Buddha said, well, we don't accept ordained people until they get their parents' permission. So he went to his parents and said, I would like to get ordained. I, Ratthapala, want to get ordained. I want to become a bhikkhu. I want to give up all worldly possession, all family ties, all pursuit of wealth or class or wealth, and do this full time. And it's said that Ratthapala was a noble person, a princely person. Their family was the most wealthy, most powerful clan in the area, and he was the only son. So it's said. Makes it better still if he's the only son. So I think he's the only son, the only child. So the parents said, no, you're our only child. We wouldn't willingly give you up if you died, so let alone give you up to become a homeless ascetic. No, enjoy. You're rich, you're healthy, you're young. Enjoy life. You know? Eat good food, have good friends, do good stuff. Do good things in the world. Don't become some homeless, vagabond, holy person. Ratthapala said, no, I really want to do this, and just kept going back and forth. And parents said, well, what do you know? What do you know about suffering? What do you know about life? You're young. It's not in a sutta, but I imagine they said things like, when you have a kid, it'll all change. Once you have a child, your life will change, and you'll realize how foolish this childish endeavor is. And you have money. We're the most powerful family in the whole land. Be responsible. You know? Eventually Ratthapala realized, oh, this isn't going to work, so he changed strategies, as we all do sometimes, and just laid down on the ground and said, I'm not getting up or eating anything until you give me permission to become a homeless ascetic, join the spiritual path. And days went by, parents begged and pleaded, got his friends to come over and say, what are you doing, man? You're not eating food, come on, this is crazy. Let's go have some drinks and have fun. What what did the Buddha tell you? Did he put some spell on you or something? Snap out of it. And so eventually the parents realized and the friends realized, oh, Ratthapala is really serious. And the friends went to the parents and said, listen, let him become a monk, let him become a homeless person. He's going to hate it. He's going to hate it. Just let him do it, and then he'll come crawling back in a few months, saying, oh, it's so miserable being homeless outside. No money, no home, no family. This meditation thing is terrible. I try to meditate, my mind just goes everywhere. What am I doing? Ugh. He'll realize this is stupid and come back. Just let him do it. And so the parents relented and said, we give you permission to join the Buddha. However, you have to promise to come back at some point and visit us. And so he says yes, joins Buddha, and as the text says, in a short amount of time, which the commentaries says something like 10 years, 12 years, became a fully enlightened person after practicing ardently, diligently for so many years. And then there's a whole beautiful story about how he comes back. First he becomes enlightened, which is amazing. He's fully awakened, achieves full nirvana, goes to the Buddha and says, I would like to see my parents now. I made a promise, made a commitment. I'll go see my family after, my former family, I guess, after I got enlightened. This old school Buddhism is very hardcore. You basically break family ties completely. Other forms of Buddhism are really different. Some form of Buddhism even start families. So, in this particular form, in these early days, completely breaking ties. And so it said the Buddha read his mind basically. Met his mind with his mind, then Ratthapala's mind with the Buddha's mind, and saw clearly that he was fully awakened. There was no chance that he would fall back into old patterns, going home, and so gave his permission to go off and visit his homeland again. Which is interesting for a lot of reasons. One, because, okay, so the Buddha can read people's minds. That's interesting. That'd be good to know if that's true. I would like to know how that's done. And two, that there was such a deep concern that going back home, going back to see one's old loved ones or parents or old friends has such power that was important for the Buddha to examine his mind to make sure that it wouldn't get tempted to fall back into old ways. And so up in Lowell, it's very common, there's a saying in these spiritual meditation circles that if you want to test someone's awakening, test someone's practice, let them go home for a week and see how they do. It's very easy to live in a spiritual community and, meditate because you have to, because the schedule says you have to meditate or something. And then we go home and talk to our parents or visit an old friend, and then suddenly we're like our old 16-year-old self. And, leave me alone. You're always like this. Can't take you. Why don't you just change? So, good to know it. It's definitely something I've seen play out a lot over the years of deep concern a lot of us have of what happens when I go back to my old stomping grounds. You don't necessarily have to live in a monastic community. It could be maybe for years we had a strong addiction to alcohol or marijuana or something else, and then we left that life behind, and then maybe we get invited to a wedding or something with those old friends, and we can wonder, oh, what's going to happen when I hang out with these people again? Maybe there's some old relatives that I haven't seen for a long time. There's some sort of family break, and families don't talk to each other anymore, and then there's the opportunity to meet up again. The question can arise, what's going to happen when we come together again? This distinction and clarity and acknowledgement that relationships really matter. That we're not just self-contained bubble that gets to decide unilaterally what I'm like. That it turns out everyone has an impact on me. That we're interwoven. That one of the things that I see as a big issue, it's also a great benefit, there's also a big issue in modern times, is this move towards individuality so much, and a complete breakdown of community without any real replacement. People try to make meetup.com, or tons of Zoom calls now are available. But now it's gotten to the point where there's just dozens of companies that you can pull up your phone and order anything you want for someone to go deliver it from the local store to you, because we don't want to make the effort to leave our little house, little nest. Now, some people might be disabled or have some serious limitations where they can't leave their house, and this is a great boon for them, and we should be happy we have good technology. But it's also enabling a lot of us to feed this pattern of being self-isolated, of creating our own world and not needing to connect, trying to believe that, oh, I can just read the internet and talk to only the people that I like, who believe what I believe. And the one thing I'm worried about COVID long-term, if the vaccine is found, is that maybe everyone will go, it was really hard making that trek, spending 20, 30 minutes to get dressed, and go to the meditation center, go to the Y, go to the park. It's so nice that now everyone there's just all these Zoom meetings we can do instead. I could save time, I could save effort. Let's not leave my house. Let's just stay in front of the computer. Real danger, I'm worried about that. Obviously, it's also good because it helps people that maybe are very far away and lack local community, have access to more resources. It's a double-edged sword. What I like about this part of the sutta is really acknowledging Ratthapala has been training for 5-10 years, and the Buddha is still acknowledging going back to see your parents, going back to be with your family. Just like for those of us who maybe go home for Thanksgiving, it can be really triggering, and let's make sure this is going to go well. So good news, Ratthapala is fully awakened, not an issue. And so he goes back home. Initially he goes on a begging round, on a food begging round, an alms round, asking for food. He goes to his old parents' house, and his father apparently doesn't recognize him and just heaps abuse on him, saying, you bald-headed ascetic, you good for nothing, you beggar, get out of here. My son wants to join this group. You're worthless, you just feed off parasites on society. Get out of here, I'm not feeding you. That's where Ratthapala leaves, and happens to find another person nearby who's throwing out some old oatmeal, and says, "Sister, if you're throwing out that food, would you please give it to me? You're going to throw it out anyway, so I I could make good use of it so it doesn't go to waste. And this woman happened to be a slave of his parents and recognized him and rushed to the parents and said, Ratthapala's back. He's right outside. So the father comes running out, finds Ratthapala and says, oh my God, what are you doing eating this old oatmeal? You're the son of my house. Come, I'll feed you. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. Come into the house. And Ratthapala, very kind of stern in the sutta, and goes, I've had my fill, I've just eaten my meal for the day. Don't need your help. Thanks, but no thanks. And so the father says, come tomorrow. I'll feed you tomorrow, come tomorrow. And so Ratthapala agrees. And he comes back the next day, and the father had schemed, planned, strategized. How do I bring my son back? I need an heir. I need someone to continue the family legacy. I need someone to take over the household. I need to get my son back. And so, strangely, the sutta just mentions all of a sudden that he apparently had wives before. Like, was it mentioned earlier in the sutras? I don't really understand that part. But so he gets the old wives back and says, dress up in the way that Ratthapala liked you, be attractive, adorn yourself. And then he also gathers all this gold and silver and gems, hides it under a blanket, all the inheritance that he will get. And then he makes a great feast of food. If any of you ever come up to Law to the academy, you'll see that food is the big thing for a lot of us up there. Not all of us, but some of us. And you give up the freedom to choose what time you wake up, give up a lot of sleep, give up a lot of creature comforts, give up a lot of things. Man, people really care about food. It's weird. People really care about food. And even in the Buddha's time, it's said that at one point, initially, when the Buddha started his group, there weren't that many rules. It was a new thing. It's like if we started a new game or started a new group, there weren't any rules. We just started it. And over time, rules formed in response to infractions and problems that came up, or what's best for people. And so at one point, the Buddha said, you know what, stop begging for food at night. You're scaring people, you're getting injured, it's dark. Back then it's really dark. You can't see anything if there's no moonlight. So, you're coming bumbling up the street and the townspeople are terrified, wondering who's this weird-looking person traveling in the middle of the night coming to my door. And you easily fall into ditches and it's really bad. So, new rule, no more begging at night, no more eating at night. And then eventually he went down to no more eating in the afternoon, no more begging in the afternoon. And he just kept cutting it down. And some of the monks apparently really didn't like this and rebelled and just didn't follow the Buddha. Just continued doing what they'd been doing. It's documented in these texts. It's interesting, you don't see that in a lot of religions. There's stories about how the disciples are disobeying the Buddha by eating whenever they want. The food is a real big attachment for humans. So he made a lavish meal. Ratthapala came back, ate the food, said thank you. And then the father said, wait. Brought out the wives, unveiled the mountains of gold and silver and jewels, rubies maybe, and the father said, this is all yours. This is your inheritance. Come back, join the house. What are you doing? Why are you homeless? Look at all this. You have wives and you have all this money. Think about the good you could do. Think about your responsibility to the world. You need to do good things. You're privileged. You can't just go be homeless, pursuing your own navel-gazing practice. You need to do things. Look at all this money. You can do anything with this money. And apparently Ratthapala said something like, stop speaking. it would be better for you to put all of this on a boat, put it on the Ganges, and then drown it in the middle of the Ganges River than for you to try to tempt me to come back to the old way of living. And this might seem kind of extreme. What father does it? Who does this? I don't know. But I had first-hand experience of this. So actually, even though this was, supposedly over 2,000 years ago, I don't think people have changed that much psychologically. So for example, I did a meditation retreat when I was in college at a very young age, 19 or 20. And then I remember it was my 21st birthday, and all my friends came out and said, Peter, you have to go to the bars and get drunk. It's a ritual, it's a rite of passage. We all did it, you don't have to do it. And they were like offended that I didn't want to do this. They just kept insisting on it. To the point where I just gave in. I was like, alright, this is way too much work to try to do this. The only other option would have been lying down on the floor and saying, I'm just going to die if you keep asking me for something. Leave me alone. And so they too were, think about the fun you'll have. We'll buy all the drinks for you. It's going to be great. We'll have a great time. We'll make a lavish dinner. We'll pay for a lavish dinner. It's going to be amazing. We'll invite all your good friends. Just come out and have fun. Do this thing. Join us in our old way. This is what we used to do as a group. This is who we were. Join us again. And so, I don't know what it is. There's something about people that don't initially like it when someone in the group fundamentally changes how they live. Later on, it turns, if we're lucky, it turns into admiration and inspiration. But I feel like a lot of times initially there's a rubber band effect of what's going on here. We didn't get this person back into the fold. And so Ratthapala left. He said a poem apparently, and left his father, and had no attachment, no temptation to this old way of living, to any of that gold. He had realized unconditional happiness and bliss and peace. It doesn't rely on money, it doesn't rely on family, it doesn't rely on household life, it doesn't rely on a body or a mind. So what could possibly tempt him? And then it said that he went off to a place to meditate, went to the park, found a nice tree, meditate, and the local king, the local ruler in the area, heard that Ratthapala was nearby, and over the years had heard about his reputation, that as a young man, after just one discourse, one dharma talk, he had joined the homeless ascetic life. And that was amazing. It would be like if, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg or something listened to one talk by a Dalai Lama, the next day gave up Facebook and made it into a non-profit and shaved his head and became an ascetic. Everyone was like, whoa, what is going on? Why did he do that? He had all the money and wealth and power. Why did he suddenly just literally do the opposite thing? And so the king was really excited and wanted to meet him. Went out to meet Ratthapala. And they had a small chat. How's it going? Oh, the weather's cold. Oh, I like this tree. Oh, I like this grass. It's nice to sit here and all that chit chat. Harmonizing again. And then the king cut down to the chase and asked him, so why'd you do this? From my perspective, the people that become monks, the ones that become ascetics, the ones that join the spiritual path, join for 4 reasons. One reason, because they're old, they reach the end of their life, and seeing the end of their life, they become drawn to the spiritual life, or they lose all their money. Some misfortune hits them, and they don't think they can make it back. Or they get sick. They get sick and aren't healthy anymore. So okay, I'm enjoying the spiritual life. Or someone close to them, their relatives pass away, maybe their family dies, their parents die, and so they join the spiritual life. And this is sort of amazing, again, because this was 2,000 years ago, where people think religion and superstition ruled the world and everything. But here's a king asking a very similar question that people say today. I read just yesterday, someone posted something like, isn't all religion just opiate of the masses, full of ignorant people? Shouldn't we have science and knowledge now? This is something I believed when I was like 14. I started questioning my Christian upbringing of, is religion just for people that can't make it in the world? And so they like go to this fairy tale place where they can make believe that things are going well, because there's no way to get real feedback. So people that are in bad health, people that are really depressed, or people that are close to death. But if you're successful and you're smart and you can make money and achieve things in the world, those people don't care about religion, right? So again, not much really changes in thousands of years of human history. And the king humbly asked this question. He wasn't mean about it, just like this, from my perspective, this is true. So, but you had a lot of wealth. Your family was the most wealthy family in the town. You were young, you were healthy and strong, and none of your relatives died. What's going on? Why did you do it? I don't get it. And even now, when I'm talking to you, you seem really happy and bright and amazing. What's going on? I want to know. And so Ratthapala said, well, I became an ascetic. I joined the spiritual life after I heard the Buddha give 4 points. He said 4 points. I don't want to do it injustice, so I'll just read it directly. What for? The world is unstable and swept away. This is the first point. It's a summary here, but I think the point is better. The world has no shelter and no savior. This is the second point. The world has no owner. You must leave it all behind and pass on. This is the third point. The world is wanting, insatiable, the slave of craving. This is the fourth point. And so the amazing thing is the king kind of gets this, but like most of us doesn't really get it when we hear teachings like this. And so each point by point he asks, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that? The world is unstable and swept away. What do you mean by that? And Ratthapala, you can tell, is a really good teacher because rather than just reciting dogma that you heard from someone, makes it really direct and clear and relevant to this great king. And so this first point, the world is unstable and swept away. And so Ratthapala says, what do you think, great king? When you were younger, say 20, 25 years old, were you good at riding elephants and horses and chariots and able to wield a sword and shoot archery, very strong and could run and everything? And the king says, yes, I was. It seemed almost like I had superpowers back then. That was how strong I was. No one else could equal me in strength. And so Ratthapala says, good, good. And so what do you think about now? These days, now that you're older, are you strong in thigh and arm? As in, is your body strong? Is it still as capable? And the king says, no. Now I'm old, elderly, senior, advanced in years. I'm 80 years old. And sometimes I need to step in one spot and my foot just goes somewhere else. And so Ratthapala says, this is what the Buddha meant when he said the world is unstable and swept away. You can't even rely on your own body. Think about all the things we identify with, what we consider is mine or what I can rely on or is ultimately me. And realize even our bodies change and are unreliable and don't, is unstable and gets swept away. And the king says, wow, yes, right, you're right. Yes, the world is indeed unstable and swept away. There's nothing stable there. And so the king says, he goes on to the second one. He says, in my court, in my kingdom, I have armies, I have cavalry, I have infantry, I have guards. They defend us from all threats. And yet you say the world has no shelter and no savior. How am I supposed to make sense of these 2 points? And so Ratthapala says, well, do you have any chronic ailments? And the king says, yes, I do. I have this lung coughing problem, where sometimes I'm coughing and wheezing and everyone around me thinks I'm dying. Gets really anxious and goes, oh no, king is dying. And so Ratthapala says, good. And do you think, can you ask any of your friends or loved ones, please take part of this suffering, please take part of this sickness, share this burden with me? Is there anywhere you can deposit this sickness? Is there a way you can share this burden with other people? So that not just you must suffer this ailment? And the king says, no, I have to bear it alone. And so again, this is what Ratthapala says when he says, Buddha meant when he said, the world has no shelter, no savior. And finally, well, it's 2 more points. The king says, in my court, I have all this gold. I have all this silver. I have all this wealth. What do you mean by the world has no owner? You must leave it all behind. And Ratthapala says, in this lifetime, you enjoy all kinds of sensual pleasure, you enjoy all kinds of good things, amuse yourself, fulfill yourself in all kinds of sensorial ways. But when you die, can you take any of that with you? Can you take that gold with you? Can you take that stability with you? Or is it just going to pass on to others? He says, yep, you're right. I can't take that gold with me when I die. I can't take this money. I can't take this reputation. I can't take any of this with me. And finally gets to the last point where it says, you say that the world is wanting, the slave of craving. What do you mean by that? And so Ratthapala says, well, what do you think? If someone came to you and said, there's land to the west that's easily conquerable, has great wealth, good farmland, would you go conquer it? And he says, yes, I would definitely go conquer that land. He says, okay. Now say there's a land to the north that's also has good farmland, also has a lot of money and resources. Would you say rig the election so that your person could get in power and you could take over? He says, yep, I would do that too. He says, okay, now there's a primitive tribe to the east with all these natural resources, and they have no weapons that can withstand your army. Would you go conquer that land? He says, I would definitely do that. And he says, if you go south, there's a whole tribe of people that you could take over very easily. Would you do that? He said, yes, I would do that. And Ratthapala said, that's what the Buddha meant when he said that the world is a slave of craving. It's insatiable. And similarly, I remember I had a good friend who worked really hard, many years in college and beyond, high school, immigrated from Taiwan, worked really hard year after year, trying to make enough money for his family, and he did. Became like a millionaire. He didn't really care a lot about fancy cars or fancy houses or anything like that. He just wanted stability. And he did it. And I asked him, you're a millionaire now. You own a house, you have a wife, you have a lot of money. When are you going to change your job, change your life? You often complain to me about how terrible your life is. He says, I'm going to wait until I make $2 million. Then I'll be secure. And I said, okay. And then what are you going to do when you make $2 million? He says, I want to make $4 million. And then I realized realized, oh, I see where this is going. I'm gonna stop here. Not realizing that when we satisfy one craving, that craving grows and expands and becomes insatiable. And in modern times, we can look out in the world and see a lot of companies are formed today just to try to make us, with the promise that this new product, this new service, this new workshop will satisfy your craving. This is what's going to be meaningful. This is what's going to do it. It doesn't work. As Ratthapala, it's interesting because in a lot of ways, he doesn't actually really say anything that different than what the king said. The king said, isn't it the case that elderly, impoverished, sick, and those grieving from the loss of loved ones are the ones that join the spiritual path, that turn to religion? And Ratthapala says, kind of turns it on the head, that it even applies to the king. And you have all this wealth, but you're still not satisfied. You're still not fulfilled. Look at all these celebrities and billionaires who are unsatisfied, who are not fulfilled, and constantly trying to conquer and take more. Still not happy. That no matter what you do, there are certain things like death, sickness, old age, loss of loved ones is inescapable, unavoidable. It's a fact of life. It's interesting in a lot of ways that Ratthapala basically says the same thing, but in a way that actually applies to even the king. It makes the king realize, oh, you're right. I understand. You as a young person in your 20s, hearing one talk from the Buddha, understood this deep meaning, and rather than distract yourself for decades, came to that realization and committed your life fully to doing it. Unfortunately, in modern times, we have all this great technology, which on one hand creates a lot of issues, but on the other hand has greatly increased our material wealth and greatly increased our available time. So we don't necessarily have to become a homeless ascetic to practice, to do this kind of training. It's a very recent Western phenomenon, only in the last 100, 120 years or something, where lay people do meditation retreats, where meditation is even taught widely to lay people. It just wasn't even considered a thing. Partly, I think, because back in the day when people were fishermen and craftspeople, those are naturally meditative practices to some extent. So you're just sort of meditating and you're creating a bow and arrow, or waiting for fish or something. And partly because people didn't have the time to meditate. You had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to get water from the well, to cook food, to then go work in the morning, to doing the laundry and cooking and cleaning and doing all this work where people didn't have time to really meditate in the first place. And these days people say we don't have time, but those people really didn't have time. Now we just feel like we don't have time because we fill it. It's being filled by companies trying to take control of our attention. There's different things competing to take control of our time, so it feels like we don't have time. But back in the day, people literally didn't have time in these agricultural societies, unless you're a noble person, an aristocrat or something. And so it's a very recent phenomenon in this modern world of abundance that we can, have hours of free time to hike or ski or learn how to play musical instruments or learn a practice like mindfulness. So we can be grateful and thankful that on one hand, all the modern conveniences have enabled it so that we don't have to necessarily, a lot of benefits to just going a straight up homeless ascetic route. It simplifies a lot of things. You don't have the money to go and pursue other things. but it's not as necessary now to do that, and so, and yet all of the psychology, in my opinion, all of the phenomenon, all the truths of life that this sutra talks about still applies to us today. We can be thankful that the main difference is that more people can practice this path if we choose to do so, rather than having to shave your head and give up everything to do this. So, hope that was informative. I went a bit over time, but we're going to change gears and go into meditation.